اللهم لك الحمد كله ولك الشكر كله وإليك يرجع الأمر كله علانيته وسره. لك العتبى حتى ترضى ولا حول ولا قوة لنا إلا بك. اللهم لك الحمد أنت أحق أن تحمد ولك الشكر أنت أحق أن تشكر وأنت على كل شيء قدير. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وحبيبه، بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وكشف الغمة وجاهد في الله حق الجهاد حتى أتاه اليقين. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على الحبيب المصطفى محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه ومن اهتدى بهديه وعمل بسنته إلى يوم الدين. وارض اللهم عنا معهم بفضلك وكرمك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم آمين. I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Endless He is in His glory, the creator of heavens and earth, the source of guidance, the bestower of light. I thank Allah for the blessings that He has granted me and my family and my loved ones. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for health and wealth. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for family and child. I thank Allah for friend and community. And above all, I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for bringing me to the fold of Islam. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah for the blessings that we know, and alhamdulillah for blessings that we enjoy without knowing. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us worthy of those blessings. Allahumma ameen. I bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship save Allah. And I bear witness that Muhammad is Allah's final prophet and messenger, the bearer of glad tidings, the carrier of the torch of light, the role model to be followed. Sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad. I ask Allah to extend His blessings to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to his family and descendants, to his companions and followers, and all the righteous men and women that walk in their footsteps. And I ask Allah to make us among them. Allahumma ameen. My dear brothers and sisters, I greet you with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, inshallah, marks the very last day of the Hijra year, the outgoing year 1440, which also means that tomorrow is the first of Muharram of the year 1441. Which means that it has been 1,441 years since the Prophet ﷺ migrated from Mecca to Medina, when he embarked with the believers upon this remarkable journey that changed the world and altered the course of history as we know it. And as the new year starts, my heart is filled with prayer and hope. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this upcoming year will bear better news for our community and the ummah. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we experience less pain and less suffering in our families, in our community, and in the world in this upcoming year. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for relief for our brothers and sisters in Kashmir, in Palestine, in Yemen, in Syria. Relief for suffering right here at home. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring ease of the pain, to bring allaying of the fears. Allahumma ameen. As you start the new year, brothers and sisters, you have to be hopeful. And you have to hope for the best. And you have to always be convinced that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants nothing for us except that which is best. And sometimes we are subjected to very difficult trials, but we have to stay the course, and we have to stay strong, and we have to keep saying to ourselves, even if I don't understand the wisdom behind all those trials and tribulations, that wisdom does exist. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may not reveal it every single time. I need to point something out that is really important. The fact that we remember the new Hijra year tomorrow does not mean that Hijra actually happened on the 1st of Muharram. When Umar ibn al-Khattab and the believers came together in order to decide on year 1 for the Hijri calendar, they just wanted to pick one of the most consequential events in Islamic history and to basically say that the year in which that event took place is going to be year 1. That is how it started. It doesn't necessarily mean that Hijra happened in Muharram. Hijra happened in year 1, but it did not happen in the month of Muharram. Rather, it actually happened in the month of Rabi' al-Awwal. This is something that you need to know and understand. We do, however, remember Hijra today no matter what, because it's the new Hijri year. We can't help but remember that about 1,440 years ago, the Prophet ﷺ, in a cohort of those believers, they left everything behind. They left their homes, they left their childhood memories, they left their extended families, they left their property, their possessions, their livestock, and they traveled hundreds of miles away to seek refuge in a new city that was very strange to them, seeking new hope, a new place to plant the seed of Islam. The hearts were heavy. No one wants to leave their homes. Ask any immigrant here. Yes, many of us came to America because we wanted to seek that new opportunity for us and for our families. But I guarantee you, brothers and sisters, the very core level, you ask any immigrant, had the conditions been perfectly okay back home, would you have left? The answer would be no. People were compelled to leave. The Prophet ﷺ and the believers were compelled to leave. It's not what they wanted. He tried for 13 years in the city of Mecca, and when everything failed, he had to seek grounds somewhere else. Sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So today we remember that those believers left everything behind and they traveled to the city of Medina in order to seek a new place and a new beginning. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them. And that event, brothers and sisters, changed history completely. It is in that society of Medina that the Muslim community was established, and from there it became a springboard that changed the entire world. From that focal point, Islam spread into Persia, into North Africa, into the Fertile Crescent, into Bilad al-Sham, into Turkey, into Anatolia, into West Africa, all the way into the borders of China, all because of that event that took place when the Muslims took a chance and traveled all the way to the city of Medina. That conversation is really important today, brothers and sisters. As we examine a world that has become so hostile to immigration in general, a world that is torn apart by right-wing fascist groups that want to divide us into races and colors and ethnicities and geographical origins and languages and religions, keep us all separate from each other, rather than celebrating the beautiful diversity of humanity, diversity that makes us stronger, diversity that makes us learn about each other and grow intellectually and spiritually. We live in very, very difficult times, brothers and sisters, but the event of Hijra teaches us a tremendous lesson, not just about the idea of immigration, but the idea about being the host for migrants. The idea of immigration for immigrants has a lot of lessons and a lot of values and a lot of benefits that no one can deny. We can talk about that for the longest time. But for the host, those who open their hearts and their minds and their homes and their lands to complete strangers, what does it bear for them? What fruit does it bear for them? You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ تَوَفَّاهُمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ ظَالِمِي أَنفُسِهِمْ قَالُوا فِيمَ كُنْتُمْ قَالُوا كُنَّا مُسْتَضْعَفِينَ فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا أَلَمْ تَكُنْ أَرْضُ اللَّهِ وَاسِعَةً فَتُهَاجِرُوا فِيهَا. There are some people that will grow old and die in a state of sin, the Quran says. They will die having committed tremendous atrocities, tremendous sins. And the angels who are taking their souls will ask them, what has become of you? Why have you allowed yourself to descend so low? And now that we have to take your souls in that horrible state. So they will say to them, we are actually believers, but we were persecuted in the land. We had to accept bribery. We had to support and aid and abet tyrants. We had to hide our identity because we were scared they were persecuting us. See, the cause of their sin is that they were good believers and they could not practice their faith freely. So because they are scared of tyranny, they start hiding their identities and they start walking in the footsteps of the tyrants to do what is socially acceptable, to go with the flow, to ride the wave, to keep a low profile. Sounds like a familiar story to you? When the angels come to take their souls, they will question them. You were good people. Why have you allowed yourselves to come so low in your relationship with God? You know the excuse that they'll use? They will say, we were persecuted in the land. What could we do? We had to hide. We had to be like everybody else in order to blend in. And the angels will unequivocally respond to them and they will say, wasn't the land of God vast enough for you to migrate? You cannot lock yourself up in a little box and say, well, you know, it is what it is. I have to do all of these things. My excuse is that I was locked up in the box. No, the box was not locked. You chose to stay there. Those of us who have migrated, fleeing poverty or persecution, understand this very, very well. And if you remain in a land in which you are persecuted, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold you accountable because there will be no excuse. The land of God is vast. Why have you not migrated? The angels will ask you. The idea that a cohort of people leave their land, their memories, their homes, and everything that matters to them in order to travel to a new land seeking a new beginning so that they can raise their families, their children, feeling safe and secure, being able to practice their faith freely. That idea is as old as the human story itself. It is as old as the human story. It is a legitimate idea. It's an honorable idea. But again, bigots and fascists in the world today, they want us to believe that this is bad for us and this is wrong, that people need to stay separated, that somehow my land is better than your land and my country is better than your country and my race is superior to your race. They want us to believe that. And the story of Hijra breaks this down for us and it teaches you the world is only a better place when people migrate and travel and take their cultures and their ideas and their experiences and share that with other people. See, most of the time when we talk about Hijra, you know, the migration of the Muslims from Mecca to Medina, we talk about it from the vantage point of the immigrants themselves, and what they went through and what they had to leave behind, and you know, the adaptation, the process that needed to happen in order for them to get acquainted with a new place and the new home that they've chosen for themselves. Today, I want to talk about from a different perspective. I want to talk about Hijra from the vantage point of the hosts who took a gamble on strangers, who took a chance with people that they did not know, who opened their lands and their homes and gave their gestures of kindness and hospitality and generosity to complete strangers, and how that can change the world. And I don't plan to talk about the Ansar today. You know, you'd be mistaken if you thought that I will talk about the Ansar of Medina. No, we've addressed that so many times before. I would like to talk about a woman that has taken a tremendous gamble, that has taken a huge chance, that violated the rules of safety and security in order to support complete strangers that were about to perish in the desert. She offered her home and her food and her hospitality to people she did not know, and it is through that event that the world as we know it, brothers and sisters, has completely and drastically changed. Her name is Atika bint Khalid al-Khuza'iyya, known in the books of history as Ma'bad radiyallahu anha wa ardaha. A very simple, unassuming, extremely destitute woman that lives with her husband, Aktham al-Khuza'i. She lives with her husband in the desert. Does not have any children. All they have is just a few goats and sheep that they used to herd every day. And occasionally they would sell milk, maybe meat, to travelers across the desert. Here's a story. The Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, as you all know, left the city of Mecca on their way to Medina. But in order to evade the pursuing party of bounty hunters, he decided to take a completely different path, an unusual path to Medina, which meant that there would be a longer distance and more time spent, and that subjected the journey to a jeopardy that they did not expect. And that is, they ran out of food and water and provisions. A lot of people don't know that part of the story. It wasn't just the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr, by the way. It was a company of 4 men. Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, his close friend Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Amr ibn Fuhayra, who was the servant of Abu Bakr, and a 4th man, Abdullah ibn Urayqat, who was actually a non-Muslim, but he was a professional guide who knew everything about the desert, and the Prophet ﷺ hired him in order to show him the way. Imagine the awkwardness. 3 Muslims, Muhammad, Abu Bakr, and Amr, and a 4th guy who's not Muslim, and people of this guy's tribe, Quraysh, are actually pursuing them in order to kill them. It's a very awkward relationship. I can imagine, it was 3 or 4 days before they arrive in Medina. I can imagine when it's prayer time, for example, and they have to pray. And the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr and Amr ibn Fuhayra would pray together, and Abdullah ibn Urayqat would really just sit in the corner, watch them, and just, do his thing. He's not Muslim, so he does not partake in Muslim prayer. Yet, they both tolerated each other, and they treated each other with respect, very professionally. The Prophet ﷺ did not even force him to convert to Islam, or anything like that. He treated it very professionally. But the 4 men eventually ran out of food and water, and the scholars of history actually say that they were about to perish. And suddenly, when they got so weak walking across the desert, they came across 2 tents that were worn and old, next to a little dune of sand. Allahu Akbar! They felt so relieved. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not abandon us. Our lives are saved. So Abu Bakr goes first, see the adab of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says, we will stay here. Abu Bakr, you go talk to her. Because if 4 strangers enter into the tent of an old woman at once, maybe she's going to freak out a little bit. Maybe she will panic and feel threatened by us. So we will wait here, and you go talk to her. So he goes and he talks to Atika, Ma'bad radiallahu anha. And he says to her, we are strangers, we're lost in the desert. Do you have any food? She said to them, I'm so sorry, I wish I did. I don't have any food. Do you have any milk? I'm sorry, I don't have any milk. The only thing I have right now is water. So he says to her, can I bring my friends to sit in the shade of your tent for just a few moments so that we rest and take some water? She said, absolutely. Bring them in. Opened her home and her heart and her hospitality to complete strangers. The Prophet ﷺ, Amr and Abdullah, they walk into the tent and they sat in the corner, they drink some water. They asked her, why are you here in the desert by yourself? She said to them, well, I live here with my husband. My husband actually went away to the grazing field with our livestock. So he's doing that and he is going to be coming back later in the evening. The Prophet ﷺ noticed something strange. There was actually an old goat in the corner of the tent. So he asked her, what about that goat over there? Can we milk that goat? So she smiled and she said, that's a very old goat. Last time this goat was pregnant was like years and years ago. You can't milk this goat. It's a very old goat. In fact, the only reason this goat is here is because it's too weak to walk with the other goats to where my husband took them. SubhanAllah. So the Prophet ﷺ smiled and he said to her, أَتَأْذَنِينَ لِي أَنْ أَحْلِبُهَا. Would you give me permission to milk this goat? So she said, well, you suit yourself. It's not going to make any difference, but please, go ahead. You know, be my guest. So the Prophet ﷺ walked all the way up to the goat. He sat behind the goat. And as the hadith says, and by the way, this is a story in Bukhari and Tabarani that is narrated by the scholars of hadith through Ma'bad radiallahu anha. Through her. So as the story says, فَجَلَسَ النَّبِيُّ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ, the Prophet ﷺ sat next to the goat, and he massaged the otter. فَسَمَّى عَلَيْهَا وَدَعَى لَهَا فَتَفَاجَّتْ عَلَيْهِ. He mentioned Allah's name, and he prayed for the goat. The otter filled with milk so quickly that it actually pushed the thighs of the goat to the outside legs. And he started milking her, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, to the absolute astonishment and shock of Ma'bad, who just sat there, could not believe what she's witnessing. He filled a container with milk. And guess who he offered the milk to first? He offered it, obviously, to the woman of the tent. Because he has manners, alayhi salatu wasalam. Because he has adab, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He offered her the milk first, she drank, and then gave the milk to Abdullah ibn Urayqat, the non-Muslim member of their company, and he drank milk until he filled his stomach. And then he gave it to Amr ibn Fuhayra, the servant, and then he gave it to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and whatever was left, he drank it, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And then he took the container back to the goat, and he milked the goat again until he filled the container, and he gave it to everyone another round. Everyone went for seconds, and they completely filled their stomachs with milk. And then he took it and he filled it a third time, and he gave it to Ma'bad radiallahu anha, and he says, "This is for you and your husband." Brothers and sisters, she says that they got so full from the milk that their heads got heavier and they actually fell asleep. From thinking that they were going to die and perish in the desert, to filling their stomachs with food, and to being so comfortable that you actually take a nap. Sallallahu ala Muhammad. And then when they woke up, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam thanked her, and he asked her permission for them to leave. So they left. A few hours later, Ma'bad says, my husband, Aktham, Abu Ma'bad, he came home. First thing he noticed was a container of milk. And he says, "What is that?" She said, "That's milk." "Where did it come from?" "I had all the goats." She said, it came from that goat over there." He said, "That's impossible. This is an old goat. What happened?" So she told him a story. 4 men came here. One of them has light coming out of his face. And he's the one that milked the goat for us. So he said to him, "Describe this man to me." And by the way, neither of them had seen the Prophet ﷺ before, brothers and sisters. Describe that man. So she started describing Rasulullah ﷺ in what came later on to become one of the most beautiful and comprehensive descriptions of the Messenger ﷺ in all the books of Shama'il. The story of Ma'bad and how she described Rasulullah ﷺ became the most beautiful description of the Prophet's physical features ﷺ. And that's when her husband said to her, "Wallahi law sadaqti, la inna hadha labani bani Hashim." If you are saying the truth, then that is probably the son of Banu Hashim from Quraysh that everyone is after. وَوَاللَّهِ لَقَدْ هَمَمْتُ أَنْ أَصْحَبَهُ. I swear, I actually thought about following him. وَلَأَفْعَلَنَّ إِنْ وَجَدْتَ لِذَلِكَ سَبِيلًا. And Allah is my witness. I will do that the minute I find an opportunity. Sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And then Abu Ma'bad travels all the way to Mecca, so mesmerized by the event. And he starts reciting poetry, implicitly praising the Prophet ﷺ and showing his love without mentioning his name, because it's really hot times and everyone is after him. Jazallahu Rabbun Nasi khayra jazaihi. So he says, may Allah, the Lord of all the people, give his best reward. Jazallahu Rabbun Nasi khayra jazaihi. Rafiqayni qala khaymatay Ma'badi. Those 2 friends that came as guests to the tent of Ma'bad. Huma ja'a bil huda fahtadat bih. They brought guidance that actually filled the heart of Ma'bad with guidance. فَقَدْ فَازَ مَنْ أَمْسَى رَفِيقَ مُحَمَّدِ. He or she who will become companions of Muhammad are the most victorious. فَقَدْ فَازَ مَنْ أَمْسَى رَفِيقَ مُحَمَّدِ فَقَدْ فَازَ مَنْ أَمْسَى رَفِيقَ مُحَمَّدِ. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among the companions of Muhammad in this life and the next. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to admit us to Jannah in the company of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Brothers and sisters, raise your hands and speak to Allah from the heart. أدعو الله وأنتم موقنون بالإجابة. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وقائد الغر الميامين محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. وارض اللهم عنا معهم بفضلك وكرمك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم آمين. My dear brothers and sisters, as I said earlier, tomorrow inshallah marks the very beginning of year 1441 after Hijra, which means that today is the very last day of this outgoing year. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again that this year will bear better news for us in the ummah. Allahumma ameen. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this upcoming year will bring relief for the ummah and our brothers and sisters that suffer any form of pain anywhere and everywhere. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. And I said that today we cannot help but think about Hijra, the migration of the Muslims from Mecca to Medina 1,440 years ago. And I said that we always look at migration through the eyes of immigrants themselves, but today I want to talk about migration through the vantage point of a host. Someone that opened their heart, their home, their land to complete strangers. And Ma'bad was such a person. She took a gamble, she took a chance. She opened her place, her tent, to complete strangers, and that ended up saving the life of the Prophet ﷺ and his company. Imagine how the world would have looked like. Imagine the story of Islam and what it would have looked like had she gotten scared, had she said no to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, had she refused to offer her hospitality and generosity to that company of four. Imagine what would have happened to the world, brothers and sisters. And I realize that that is the story of Hijra, really. That's the moral of the story of Hijra. Think about it. What is it that the people of Medina did? What is it that the Ansar did? They opened their city, they opened their homes, they opened their land, they opened their economy, they opened their place and their hearts, their hospitality to complete strangers that came from the city of Mecca. They may have known Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a prophet and as a religious figure. They did not know him personally, by the way. Most of them accepted Islam without seeing him. But they certainly did not know the rest of the Muslims. They did not know the rest of the Muslim community. They did not know the rest of the Muhajirin. But they took them in and they opened their hearts and they opened their homes to them. And it is through that gesture of kindness with complete strangers that one of the most sweeping and effective movements of social change was engendered. And as I said earlier, it is so necessary for us to have that conversation today. Very important, as we as a nation, instead of welcoming immigrants into our country, and many of us are immigrants, and the rest of us are sons and daughters of immigrants, rather we set up concentration camps at the borders in order to take in migrants and put them in the absolute most inhumane conditions possible. And see, I understand that there are laws that govern movement across the borders. And I understand that those laws represent the collective will of the people that live in our country. And I understand that laws are made to be enforced and to be respected by the citizens. But I also do understand that it takes absolutely horrifying factors to compel people to take massive risks with their families and their children and walk thousands of miles across deserts and forests and absolutely hostile environments in order to come to the borders of our country for safety. I understand that too. And I also understand that law is intended to preserve order and to provide people with safety. So in the course of enforcing the law, we cannot compromise both, brothers and sisters. In the course of enforcing laws, we cannot compromise the very essence and spirit of those laws. We need to bring that into that public conversation about immigration, inspired by the story of the Prophet ﷺ and by Ma'bad and the Ansar radiallahu anhum jami'an wa ardahum. Last but not least, I want to share with you a beautiful ayah from the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu, inna arsalnaka shahidan wa mubashiran wa nadhira wa da'iyan ila Allah bi'idhnihi wa sirajan munira. The Prophet ﷺ talks to the Prophet and he highlights the 6 components of his mission. O Muhammad, we have sent you to this world to become what? Shahidan, a witness. Wa mubashiran, a bringer of good news. Nadhira, a warner. Wa da'iyan ila Allah bi'idhnihi, and someone that calls people to the path of Allah with His leave, with His permission. Wa sirajan munira. What is that? A light-giving beacon. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa was not sent to the world to judge people, to humiliate people, to put people down. Rather, he was sent to the world to become a light-giving beacon. And I say to you, try to be like the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa. Everywhere you go, whoever you encounter, whoever you talk to, try to be a light-giving beacon. Ask yourself, when you have an argument with someone, even if it's about Islam, even if they are sinners and you're trying to tell them the right thing, when you talk to them so violently and so judgmentally and you put them down, are you putting light in their hearts? Are you being a light-giving beacon, or are you pushing people away from the path? When you are talking to non-Muslims, when you are mentioning Islamophobes, when you are engaged with people on social media, are you being a light-giving beacon or not? When you're having an argument with your spouse, when you're trying to correct the behavior of your children, when you're trying to admonish a friend, are you being a light-giving beacon as the Prophet ﷺ was or not? I always say to people, any religious argument in the world, if it leaves people less connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it was done wrong, and I don't care if you are on the right side. But if the end of the conversation is that you lost that person, then it was done wrong, no matter what. Then you are not a giver of light, as the Prophet ﷺ was. 4 days he is with Abdullah ibn Urayqit. He didn't even talk to him about Islam, because he believed that his actions will speak much louder. I noticed something really interesting, by the way. Remember the story when the Prophet ﷺ was in his house and he asked Ali ibn Abi Talib to sleep in his own bed? And there were 11 assassins outside the house that waited in order to assassinate the Prophet ﷺ. Remember that story? And it's mentioned at the beginning of Surah Yasin, when Allah blinded them and the Prophet ﷺ was able to sneak between them. I examined the 11 names of those 11 men, and I realized that every single one of them died in a state of kufr. None of them became Muslim later. None of them. Why? Because you make an attempt on the Prophet's life, that's it, you're cursed forever. That is the type of attitude that will never be forgiven. That's it. They were never guided to the path. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expelled them. That's it. Now compare this with someone like Ma'bad radiallahu anha wa ardaha, and her compassion with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and his mission. That is someone who's being a light-giving beacon, brothers and sisters. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this day to accept our good deeds, to forgive our sins, to establish us firmly on His path. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our trespasses and weaknesses. I ask Allah to fill our hearts with empathy towards others. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us make a difference in the lives of others with compassion, with love and grace. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to help us make da'wah and bring people to His path in the most wise and effective way possible. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this day to bless our community members and their families and loved ones, to grant us a beautiful upcoming year in which we experience less pain, less tyranny, less adversity, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring relief in this upcoming year to our community members and to this ummah. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He gathered us here in this sacred place to gather all of us in the highest level of His Jannah. Allahumma ameen.